Hey Strength Faction, this is Coach Mike coming at you from Rebel Strength and Conditioning in Chicago. Today, in Just the Tip, I'm going to talk to you about picking the right movement for you in your training program. So, we just had a lesson on this in our spring faction, and what we talked about were a couple factors that you want to consider when choosing the right exercise to perform in your program, right? So what we do is we offer our students autonomy, right? So when we write our program out, we might have a squat movement, but we'll give them three or four different choices of squat to do. All are going to be different levels, all are going to address different experience level. So that's the first thing that we want to consider when picking a movement is your training age, right? So when I talk about training age with my clients, I want to know how long they've been doing something well, right? So if you tell me that you've been training for 15 years, but for 10 years you really didn't have any idea what you were doing, you're kind of just wandering around the gym, picking up weights and putting them down with no purpose or no focus, I'm not going to count those years. So training age, how long have you been doing something and doing it well, right? So that's going to dictate what movements we choose for you in your program. Mobility restrictions, right? So if we do a screening on somebody and their overhead squat needs work, we're obviously not going to be putting a lot of squatting in there. We might replace their squat movement with some correctives, perhaps some prying goblet squats or whatnot, but we always want to have an appropriate movement that coincides with our mobility restrictions and our limitations. Current training status, right? So if we have somebody that came into the faction and they haven't been training for very long, or maybe they're just coming off a year-long break or 6-month break due to injury, whatever it is, you have to take that into consideration when choosing your movements and the intensity that you're going to perform them at, right? So be honest with yourself. Are you in the type of condition to face the intensity that's laid out in front of you in your training program? How do you recover from a movement, right? So if I have a client that I'm doing barbell front squats with, and they tell me that every time they do that particular workout, afterwards they're sore for a week or their hip starts to bother them, I'm going to go ahead and change that movement up, right? So if it feels good while you do it, but then you're not recovering from the movement very well, you're going to want to change that movement up to something that is a little bit better suited for you. So quick recap. Training age. How long have you been doing some training and training well? Mobility restrictions. Do you have the command of mobility to perform the movements that are allotted in your program? Current training status. Are you up to par with where you need to be to train at the level that your current program lays out for you? And how do you recover, right? Are you recovering quickly and well from the movements that you have chosen to do in that program? So those are some guidelines that will help you pick the proper movement in your training program. Hit us up with questions and we'll see you next week. Take care.